Star Trek: Strange New Worlds hints at Dr. Roger Korby's villainous turn. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds has earned a reputation for weaving clever foreshadowing into its playful episodic adventures, often laying the groundwork for future storylines long before they fully emerge. Season 3 is shaping up to be no different. Among the many subtle threads the show is beginning to pull, one of the most intriguing is the careful setup surrounding Dr. Roger Korby, a name that longtime Star Trek fans instantly recognize, and a character whose ultimate trajectory is all but destined to be tragic. While the series has not yet fully revealed Korby's transformation, it's becoming increasingly clear that Strange New Worlds is hinting at the dark path awaiting one of the most consequential scientists in Federation history. Korby's legacy in the original series is infamous. Introduced in the 1966 episode, What Are Little Girls Made Of?, Korby was once known as the Michelangelo of biological research, a brilliant thinker whose groundbreaking ideas pushed the limits of human knowledge. But when Captain Kirk and Nurse Chapel eventually found him, they discovered a man, if he could still be called that, irrevocably changed. The TOS episode revealed Korby had transferred his consciousness into an android body, becoming a disturbing blend of genius and machine, and ultimately losing himself in the process. His fall from grace is one of the early franchise's most memorable ethical nightmares. Strange New Worlds, with its prequel setting and focus on character depth, now has the opportunity to explore what sent him down that path. The seeds of Korby's downfall. Season 2 of Strange New Worlds subtly laid the foundation for Dr. Korby's future arc. Though he hasn't yet appeared on screen, Christine Chapel's emotional evolution has made his shadow loom larger than ever. Her relationship with Spock, her blossoming scientific aspirations, and her ambition to pursue groundbreaking research all create the context needed to reintroduce Korby in a meaningful way. The show's writers seem keenly aware that Chapel's past is one of the most underexplored corners of Trek canon, and Korby is the key to unlocking it. In TOS, Chapel's history with Korby is referenced only briefly. They were engaged before he disappeared on an archaeological mission and was presumed dead. Strange New Worlds has already begun expanding Chapel's story, following her pursuit of the Vulcan Science Academy and showcasing her passion for frontier-level medicine. For the first time, we are beginning to understand what kind of woman Korby fell in love with, and what kind of woman might eventually discover the horrifying truth about the man she thought she knew. The new series has a knack for reframing legacy characters with more emotional nuance, and Korby is poised to receive that same treatment. Rather than presenting him as a purely tragic villain, SNW seems prepared to paint him as a visionary whose downfall stems from ambition and desperation. Given how the show remakes Lon Noonien-Singh's inherited trauma and breathed new life into a relatively obscure character, it's likely Korby will undergo a similar transformation, a sympathetic, brilliant, charismatic scientist whose ideals gradually twist into obsession. Hints through Chapel's choices. The clearest hints about Korby's eventual descent appear not through direct references, but through Chapel's ongoing character arc. Her storylines, especially in Season 2, have revolved heavily around identity, purpose, and the ethics of scientific intervention. Her experience with the Klingons, her role in the Gorn Crisis, and the emotional turmoil of her relationship with Spock have all pushed her toward personal reinvention. Chapel is evolving rapidly as a character, and her choices suggest she may be becoming the sort of scientist who could be drawn to Korby's radical philosophies, or who might ultimately reject them with equal force. One poignant moment came when Chapel, facing rejection from the Vulcan Science Academy, declared her desire to focus on work that mattered, work that changed people's lives. This drive is precisely the kind of passion Korby himself embodied. It's easy to imagine the two forming a powerful intellectual partnership, one fueled by a shared belief in pushing scientific boundaries. SNW could use that connection to deepen the eventual tragedy. Chapel would not simply lose a fiancé, but a partner whose brilliance once matched her own. At the same time, Chapel's compassion and her hard-won emotional growth suggest she may ultimately serve as the moral counterweight to Korby's obsession. The seeds of conflict are already being planted. SNW's pattern of foreshadowing. Perhaps the strongest reason to believe SNW is telling a slow-burn Korby story is the show's proven history of planting long-term narrative seeds. Captain Pike's tragic future has been treated as a season-spanning emotional arc. Lon's struggles with temporal dislocation continued well after her crossover episode with Lower Decks. Spock's internal conflicts regarding emotion and identity have evolved over multiple seasons. SNW loves continuity, but it also loves patience. By gradually reshaping Chapel into a bold, emotionally complex scientist, the show is preparing her for Korby's arrival in a way TOS never had time to explore. And from a meta perspective, Korby makes perfect sense as a Season 3 or Season 4 figure. He's iconic enough for fans to anticipate, but flexible enough for writers to expand without stepping on established canon. Additionally, the show has made references to former or future partners of its characters before introducing them. Think of Spock's fiancée Turing, who transitioned from an obscure TOS character to a fully realized supporting role. The creators enjoy building out past relationships to add depth and heartbreak. Korby presents that opportunity in a much darker, more philosophical way. A modern reinterpretation of Korby. If Korby disappears soon, SNW will almost certainly reinterpret him through a more contemporary lens. The 1960s version of Korby was a cautionary tale about technological hubris. In 2025, that theme resonates more than ever, and SNW's commitment to philosophical storytelling makes Korby ripe for reinvention. Imagine Korby not simply as a scientist obsessed with survival through android bodies, but as a man standing at the crossroads of synthetic life, identity, and the ethics of consciousness transfer. With characters like Data, Soji, and the entire synthetic rights storyline from Star Trek, Picard enriching the franchise's modern context, Korby's work becomes more than a one-off mad science project. It becomes a foundational piece of Federation history. SNW could portray Korby as one of the earliest pioneers of android sentience research, whose work predates and even influences Noonien Soong's later breakthroughs. This would create an elegant connection between eras while giving Korby's arc philosophical weight. Such groundwork would turn his tragedy from simple madness into a deeply human warning about losing oneself inside the very future one seeks to create. Chapel as the emotional anchor. If Korby is destined to fall, Chapel is the one who will feel it most. SNW has invested heavily in her personal growth, her heartbreak, and her internal conflicts. Introducing Korby at this point in her development would set the stage for one of the show's most emotionally devastating arcs. Chapel's growing independence and her complicated, now fractured relationship with Spock place her in a vulnerable emotional position, one Korby could unintentionally exploit. It's not difficult to imagine a scenario where Chapel, older and more confident, is drawn back to the familiar warmth of a past love, only to discover that Korby is not the man she once believed. Their reunion, whenever it comes, could be layered with betrayal, longing, and philosophical disagreement. SNW excels at character-driven drama, and this would be fertile territory. Moreover, Chapel's medical background gives her a front-row seat to the ethical implications of Korby's research. She is uniquely positioned to challenge him, to understand what he is attempting, and ultimately to confront the cost of his ambition. Her horror at discovering that Korby has abandoned his humanity could be one of the most emotionally wrenching moments in the series. Setting up a classic tragedy,